welcome to another episode in the saga of pain that is the Disgusting series. If you're new to it, my name is Tyler Parker. I am a complete amateur and I'm trying to take my 1996 Mustang drifting. And my first try with it is coming in less than a week. So this is late in the game. I just heard my diff popping and grinding a little bit and I was like, I should probably change the fluid. And then thought that maybe I might as well change the clutch packs because I heard people do that. Today I got Ford Performance clutch packs. I got Mobil 1 gear oil that says it has friction modifier in it. And if you're wondering whether or not you still need modifier on top of that, the answer is probably. When I talked to a guy at an auto parts store, he was just like, well, I don't care enough to do it. So take that how you want to. I bought it. And then I didn't need it because this actually came with my kit. The kit was only like $100. So for that kind of money, why not? Well, I might find out why not. Because every single thing that I've done to this car has been more difficult than I was anticipating. So without further ado, let's jack this bitch up and get started. Real quick, if you enjoy this kind of content, please subscribe and hit the bell. These videos get a fraction of the attention that my reviews do, and they cost exponentially more to make, so every like, comment, share, and sub means a lot. For this job, I put the Disgusting on 4 jack stands to keep the vehicle level while I'm replacing the fluid. Before starting, it would be in your best interest to soak the clutch packs in some friction modifier for at least 30 minutes. It smells like a skunk crawled up inside another skunk, burnt some popcorn, and then died, so I'd recommend putting them in a bag and not doing what I did. Then take off the wheels and the brake caliper and rotor, which proved to be a pain in the ass on my car. Surprise, surprise. My issue was that the parking brake line was in the way of one of the bolts securing the caliper on each side. I tried pulling off the cable, but I couldn't manage it. I ended up getting off the bolt, but it did chew up the brake cable a little bit. With the caliper off, I took off the rotor, and my friend helped me secure the caliper with a bungee cord. I also learned later that I had to take off my ABS sensor, so do this too. However, these are fragile and easy to break. I found this out after breaking them. But this has to be done in order to get out your C-clips, and I'll talk about what those are here in a moment. Also, remember, leverage and penetrating fluid are your friend. Use them when you can. This is where the fill plug is. It's usually a 3/8 box end. It's in there. No. Okay, it's spinning. In order to get the plug out, I used some penetrating fluid and an extension so that I got a better angle on it. With this out and over 2 hours of my life gone due to the issues getting off both of the calipers like a stuck bolt, now we have to drain the fluid. To do this, take off the diff cover and leave the top bolt loose but still in. These shouldn't be crazy tight. Luckily, that was the case here. The rear sway bar was in the way slightly, but I was able to work around it. It took a little while because there were just so many bolts. Once I got all of them out, this being the Disgusting, the cover was stuck on there. And you really want to avoid damaging the cover and the diff mating surface. Although I have seen people just smack the shit out of these. I pried from various angles to avoid damaging anything, and this took 5 or 10 minutes before I got it pretty loose. With the diff drained, I took off the last bolt and then started disassembling the diff. The first thing you have to do is remove the center pin, which requires removing a small bolt. Mine was a 5/16. I used an 8mm, which was close, but it almost stripped the bolt, which would have been tragic. There it is. So you're gonna wanna put the car into neutral in order to turn that. All right, so just remove that quick. Say what? That helps. Once you have this bolt out, the center pin will just slide out of place whenever you rotate the differential. After this, you have to remove the C-clips. With my type of differential, the C-clips keep the axles from sliding out while you're driving. This is where I had to remove those ABS sensors. You start by pushing in the axles, like by pushing on the actual hubs. This exposes the C-clips in the diff, which should be easy to get out with some needle nose pliers or a magnetic tool. Mine were not, and took a while to get in the right position at the right angle to squeeze them out. With those out, we can slide the axle out a little bit to allow us to get the S-spring, which was the second hardest part of this project. But first, replace your wheel bearings and axle seals at this point. Even if they seem fine, do it. It's cheap if you have this kind of setup, and I will explain why I regret not doing this later, despite my bearings operating properly. Anyway, in order to get the S-spring out, take a piece of wood or a hammer handle and tap the spring with the hammer at the other side. It takes a good beating to press this out. This took us a while, and my dad was the one who ended up getting it out through prying at it with a flathead and compressing it with the long nose clamping pliers.
Alright, now with our gears marked up, we're going to take out each one of these.
I marked them pretty poorly, but I did also cut out a piece of cardboard to try to keep track of which gear goes where. When taking out the spider gears, which are the gears in the middle, make sure that the washer on the back comes out too. You spin the diff, push from the other side if needed, and then these should come out quite easy. Then pull off the side gears, which are also pretty easy. Just start with the one on the opposite side of the big ring gear. Additionally, make sure that you take off the big washer too. These come with layers of clutches, shims, and washers, and you want all of them out there so then you know how to set up the new one, so keep them in order. The other side gear came out with none of the clutch packs or washers, so I had to retrieve them and pull them out piece by piece and make sure I kept them in the right order. Then I began scraping off the old RTV gasket or whatever was on this diff and the diff mating surface. You want to use a plastic blade and some Scotch-Brite, that way you don't gouge the metal. And I shoved a shop towel over the guts of the diff to keep stuff from getting on it. I swear this took an hour, and this did not look as good as ChrisFix's after, but whatever.
So I gave up last night. Here's what we got. I cleaned off this surface. It does feel smooth. Just a hell of a lot better than it used to be.
Then came the actual clutch replacement. After cleaning off all the parts that we are reusing, I took a look at the clutches, shims, and washers included. I then put everything on a new box that was clean and took out the clutches and shims from the friction modifier that they were being soaked in. Pro tip, if you don't want to get contaminants on your clutch packs, don't wear a shirt caked in dog and cat hair. After building each side, I found that the shims in my kit had different teeth from the side gears, so I actually had to reuse my old shims on new clutches. With the side gears ready to go, I put some modifier on the back of the spider gear washers to hold them on during the reassembly. I then took off the shop towel and tried to wipe off any visible pieces of RTV that I could find, along with a strangely concerning amount of hair. Then I went to pop in the side gears. Make sure that you align the tabs before you push them in. The ring gear side is what you should do first. It was a little tricky. The other side went more smooth. And then I put in the spider gears, which are easier but involve rotating the side gears in order to place them in there. If you want to see these being put in, watch the ChrisFix video. He gets way better angles than I do, and my camera keeps dying because I take 2 hours to overcome each of my many issues. However, I definitely learned important stuff from this in my first couple track runs that ChrisFix does not talk about, so stay tuned for that later in the video. I then reached the hardest thing about the whole job, putting back in the S-spring. I tried for a while to no avail. I compressed the S-spring with a bench vise, grabbed it with clamping pliers, and tried to shove it in there to hammer it, but I wasn't making any progress and feared that I would break something. My dad had no such fear and managed to work it in there after a while. With the S-spring in, push back in the axles, pop back on the C-clips, and then begin the process of trying to put the center pin back. This is a lot of back and forth with tapping the S-spring. Once you get it right, the pin will drop in. Then put some thread locker on the little but crucial bolt that holds in the center pin, tighten it to 25 or 30 pound-feet, and voila, your diff is done. Sort of. Now take some gasket sealant, put it on the mating surface, and then place on the new gasket. Then hand tighten the cover back on, go around and snug each of these bolts. They don't need to be cranked on there too much, 30 foot-pounds or so. And then with the cover on, the last thing to do is fill up the diff. I got 75W140, that's what's recommended for the Mustang. This is synthetic air lubricant for limited slip differentials. It includes friction modifier. I almost forgot that we need to add a little bit of friction modifier. If you want to be exact, adding roughly 4 ounces. This is like a 7-ounce bottle. Now this also says it comes with friction modifier, so I wouldn't go too ham on it. With the pump fitted and your extra bottles on standby, start filling the diff through the fill hole at the top. This is tedious and a little messy. Make sure that the vehicle is level whenever you're doing this. Once it starts coming out of the fill hole, you're done. From there, put back in the fill plug. Put back your ABS sensors, your rotor and caliper, and your wheel. And then crack open a cold beverage of your choosing because you're done. Guys, this took me most of my weekend to do. I left out some of the agony here because I couldn't film it all and my audio was not great. I ultimately failed at taking out and putting in the S-spring, so I wouldn't exactly recommend this to amateurs who want to do this themselves on a car that they need for daily transportation. If you're going to try this one as a noob like me, I'd make sure that you have at least a mechanically inclined friend nearby to call on just in case. And the shitty part is that I probably wasted my time. After going to my first drift event, I found myself to be just about the only person with a limited slip diff. Pretty much everyone else had a welded diff, and I found out why. An LSD is not super consistent, especially when you're a bit underpowered and have 9-inch wheels on the back. You can definitely make it work, but throwing in an open diff and welding it is definitely the way to go if this is strictly a drift car. It's also apparently possible to weld a limited slip differential, however that's a little bit more tricky. If this is a street car, it would be a different story. In that case, this fix alleviated my grinding and popping issue and it locks up quite nicely. Just make sure to replace the bearings and axle seals as the Stang was leaking a decent amount of fluid from the axle ends after the first event. Overall, this modification is great for people with worn out LSDs that want their street car to gain back some of its youth. But this won't exactly replace a welded diff, so weigh your options. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give a thumbs up, and I'll catch you in my next review or disgusting video.
Okay, so now that I got both of these on here, this is not going anywhere, hopefully. Now, I'm gonna put on the rotors. I'm gonna try to not touch the actual discs. You know, son of a bitch.